Welcome, kids, to Sabbath School. We're here to tell you the story of King Hezekiah, who was ruler of Jerusalem. There he is, standing in front of his front gates. Now, King Hezekiah was a pretty good king, but his dad, not so much. You see, his dad liked to worship idols. So, here's how idols work. Let's look at a very cute cow. See those cows? Aren't they cute? I think they're very, very cute. So there's some cute cows. And cows are fun. They give you milk. I don't know how many of you have ever had cow milk. And cows go moo. Yeah. Cows are pretty nice. Even Lego cows. Of course, Lego cows don't give much milk, but we'll pretend. So anyway, here is a cow, and they play around and go in the grass. But then, sometimes, crazy people do something. They say, what if I make a cow out of gold? What would happen then? You end up with a cow idol. Now, what kind of crazy person would bow down to the idol? Like, oh, cow idol, you are so wonderful. That would be a little bit odd, but people do that. So.
And watch where you're kneeling, especially if you're in a Lego room, and watch who you're kneeling to. Otherwise, you might end up with a Lego in your knee.
Yeah, Legos in the knees are one good reason to make sure you're kneeling to the right thing. So, you see, this is a pencil sharpener. It is quite a lovely pencil sharpener, and it is used for sharpening pencils. As you can see, you stick the pencil in, and you turn the thing, and you turn the thing, and you turn the thing, and this was a really not used pencil, so it's going to take a little while to sharpen it.
They can make a sharpened pencil, as you probably see.
That's right. But what would happen if you named the pencil sharpener Habaduba and bowed down to it? Now, pencil sharpeners are very good for sharpening pencils, but bowing down to Habaduba, not a good idea. There is King Hezekiah's dad bowing down to the idol Habaduba. Not a good idea. Now, King Hezekiah, unlike his dad, wanted to worship the true God. So he said, no more idols, and got his wrecking ball and tried to wreck it, and hopefully didn't hit too many of his people with the wrecking ball, because the wrecking ball was really out of control. There. Whoa, you hit King Hezekiah. Okay, phew.
No more idols!
No more idols. And all the people said, yay!
Except the person who fell off,
Except the person who fell off, who said, please take me to the hospital. Anyway, all the people were so happy that they weren't going to worship idols anymore, and they said, hey, we have a great idea. Let's worship the God in heaven by having Passover. And Hezekiah said, yeah, let's do that. And so everyone got together and decided to celebrate. The story of the Passover goes like this. In the land of Egypt, years ago, the people of Israel were slaves. In a burning desert known as Egypt land, Moses and his people slaved at Pharaoh's command.
Really? Oh well. Continuing story.
Continuing the story. Pharaoh was very mean to the people, so Moses went to Pharaoh and said, let my people go. And Pharaoh Pharaoh said, "Ha! I will not let your people go." And Moses said, "If you do not let my people go, there's gonna be trouble. This river that is here behind me is gonna turn to blood." And Pharaoh said, "Ha ha." And Moses said, "Don't say I didn't tell you." That night at midnight, something amazing happened. The river turned to blood. And the next day, when everyone woke up and went to get their water and take a bath, they were like, "Oh my goodness, the river has turned to blood. What are we going to do?" The next day, Moses went to Pharaoh and said, "Let my people go." And Pharaoh said, "Ha! Your bloody river doesn't scare me. I'm not going to let the people go." And Moses said, "Okay, watch this." And suddenly, a bunch of frogs fell out of the sky and landed all over the place. And Pharaoh was like, "Ew." The next day, Moses went back to Pharaoh and he said, "Pharaoh, you must let my people go." But Pharaoh did not want to let the people go. He said, "Are you kidding me, Moses? I'm not letting the people go. Bloody water and frogs don't scare me." And Moses said, "Well, what about gnats?" And gnats were everywhere. And Pharaoh and the guy said, "Yeah, because the gnats were all over the place."
There's a river of blood, gnats everywhere, and frogs everywhere. Can it get any worse?
Well, Pharaoh thought, it can't get any worse. What can this Moses do? But when Moses came up and said, "Pharaoh, you've got to let my people go," Pharaoh said, "Yeah, I do not." And Moses said, "Well, okay." And he waved his staff and prayed to God.
And God sneezed out a bunch of
And God sneezed out a
flies.
bunch of flies. The next day, when Moses went to talk to Pharaoh, he said, "Pharaoh, you really do want to let my people go." And Pharaoh said, "No, I really don't. You keep coming and telling me these things, but your people will not go." And Moses said, "So you want even more bad things to happen to this country? Are you sure that's a good idea?" And Pharaoh said, "You can't do anything else. This was just all trickery." And Moses said, "Well, you see your animals over there?" And Pharaoh said, "Yeah, I see those animals over there." And Moses said, "Well, you won't see them tomorrow." And at midnight, something terrible happened. The animals all died. Doo doo doo. So with the animals dead, you would think that Pharaoh would be worried. And maybe he was a little bit, but if he was, he didn't show it. The next day, when Moses came up, he said, "Pharaoh, you must let my people go." And Pharaoh said, "I don't think so. I don't want to let your people go. Why should I do that?" And Moses said, "You will be sorry." The next day, all the Egyptians had sores on them. Big red boils that hurt and were uncomfortable, and they were so upset, and they were like, "Oh, okay, 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 we'll let the people go, but never mind, we don't really want to." And Moses said, "Pharaoh, you really want to let the people go. God will make sure his people go. You should not fight him." But Pharaoh said, "No, I will not let the people go." And so Moses said, "Okay." And he put his staff to the sky. Choo choo choo. Oops. And the hailstones started coming down on the Egyptians. and they hurt. And they were like, ow, ow, ow. And some of them even died, but not Pharaoh, but they were all hurt pretty bad. So the next day Moses came back to Pharaoh, who had a few bandages on, because after all this hail had fallen all over the place. And Moses said, "Hey Pharaoh, you really need to let my people go. They do not want to work for you anymore, and God has other plans for them." But Pharaoh had already gotten stubborn, and he didn't want to lose all his workers. So Pharaoh said, "Nah, I don't think so." And Moses said, "Okay." And he walked away from Pharaoh. But as he walked away, something happened. Grasshoppers fell all over the place. And the thing about grasshoppers is they really like plants. It was only a few days and all of Pharaoh's crops were gone. There was nothing left. And Pharaoh was like, uh-oh, what am I going to eat now? There are no plants anywhere in Egypt. This is a disaster. This is terrible. And he called Moses and said, okay, you can take your people. And Moses said, all right. And then Pharaoh said, just kidding, cannot. And Moses said, all right, Pharaoh, this is it. If you don't want to let my people go, the sun will go away. And Pharaoh said, ha, that's not going to happen. And Moses said, just you wait. And as he spoke, guess what happened? It went dark. Pharaoh didn't know what to do. They couldn't see. They couldn't move hardly, because every time they did, they tripped. They
or fell on the frogs or gnats or flies that were everywhere.
Yeah, and it was gross. And everyone was like, Pharaoh, you gotta stop this. But Pharaoh was stubborn. He was really stubborn. He said, no way, it's gotta end someday. But after 3 days of darkness, Pharaoh was like, I don't think this is gonna end. So when Moses came back, and Pharaoh was like, how did you even find it here? And Moses was like, oh, God help me. And he said, all right, Pharaoh, I'm not even going to ask if you are going to let my people go. But after the next plague, your son will die. And
unless you paint blood on your doorway.
And Pharaoh was like, ha, I'm not going to do some stupid thing like that. It's not like I don't have enough blood in the river already. And Moses was like, well, your choice. Moses said that the last plague would be the worst of all. Every firstborn child in Egypt would die. But there was a way to make it so they wouldn't die. You had to paint the blood of a wonderful, cute little lamb. Now, who wants to kill a cute little lamb? Nobody does. But God asked the people to, because he wanted them to understand that someday he would be the lamb that would die, to make it so they didn't die. That is what Jesus did for us. And that's why we celebrate actually Easter every time, because Jesus died and rose again. So the people would kill the lamb, and then they would use the blood from the lamb to paint around the doorpost. This was to show that they believed that God would protect them. So they'd get the blood, dip it onto their paintbrush, and go up and put it around the doorpost very carefully, because they didn't want to fall down the ladder. And that is how they showed God that they were waiting for him and believed in him. That night the angel of death came through and passed by all of the houses with blood on them. But the places like Pharaoh's palace that did not have blood on them, the angel of death killed firstborn children. When Pharaoh woke up and found that his boy was dead, he was so sad and he was so mad. And he said to Moses, "Come, take the people, go, take your cattle, your flocks, everything you own. And in fact, I'll even give you some gold to get out of here. You're ruining my country." And Moses said, "Yay, God will let us go. Now my people are free." So the Israelites all ran away from the Pharaoh because they were so scared of Pharaoh. But then, what happened? They got to the sea. "Oh no, what are we going to do? Moses, help us," they said. "We're just going to die out here. We can't swim." But Moses said, "Wait and see what God will do." And he stretched out his staff over the sea, and the wind came up, and the sea turned to dry land. The sea has turned to dry land. Everyone said, "We'll go across now." And that's exactly what they did. Moses went, and all the cows went, and the people went, and they stepped on fish a little bit, but tried not to. And they all got to the other side.
And I guess one of them got pinched by a lobster.
Yep. But in the end, all the people had gotten to the other side. And they saw something they did not want to see. The horses and chariots of Pharaoh were coming after them. And they said, "Oh no, what are we going to do? Pharaoh is chasing us. We can't get away from Pharaoh. Why, God, you opened up the river and then this happened?" And Pharaoh went into the river
Along with some of the horses.
Along with his horses and chariots. And when they were all in the middle of the river, God put the river back down, and the water went plop over them. And all of Israel said, "Yay, yay, God has saved us from Pharaoh." And that is the story of the Passover. And that's what King Hezekiah was celebrating with his people, because they all wanted to remember how good God was to them and how he took care of them in all problems. Much later, it seemed like there were some problems. The mighty army of Assyria came to attack Hezekiah. They were mean and nasty, and all they wanted to do was get rid of Israel. Look at this guy. He's sitting here going, "Arg, we will get rid of Israel." And they went up to Hezekiah and to Jerusalem. And there they are. And Hezekiah was like, "Oh my goodness, look at this big, huge army of mean people. What am I going to do? Oh, wait, one fell down and needs to stand up again." Hezekiah was like, help." And the guy said, "Nobody's going to help you. You think your God is going to help you? We've defeated all these other people, and none of their gods help them. What makes you think your God is going to help you?" And they all were like, "No way." And Hezekiah was like, I think God can help us, but I think I need to pray. So he and his people, they knelt down and they said, "Dear God, please help us. You know that you are the strongest God ever, but did you hear these guys? They're saying you're not strong. They're saying you're weak. This is not good at all. God, you've got to help us." And Hezekiah prayed and prayed and he prayed. And then something miraculous happened. Let's look. The gates came open. The angel of God came out, and all of the army went a tumbling down, boom. And Hezekiah's men saw that they were all dead. They said, "Oh, thank you, God. You have saved us from the mighty army." And kids, I want you to remember that God's always there to help us whenever we need it, and no matter how big the army is. Thanks for coming to Sabbath School. Have a good week.